We welcome you once again to this Holy Sabbath day here in Santa Rosa in California. And we are welcoming you again to this session of teaching the truth, nothing else but the truth of the Bible. Revelation 14:1 USA is the name of our ministry here, dedicated to correcting the teachings that Christianity of today has been deceived into. And there is a lot. Many of these teachings have been carried over into the Protestant movement from the days of old, and others have been introduced lately into Christianity, and we are seeing changes not only in the teachings of Christian churches, but also in the activities that they are involved in. So, as we approach the end of this world, we always believe through prophecy that we are in the very last days of the existence of this world. And therefore, we also know that Christians will be persecuted for the truth that they stand up for. So we have been studying this topic for a few sessions in the past, but we've moved away from it since this is a very important topic to know, because we will be, as Christians, affected by persecution. We will be pushed aside because of our faith, and we question the use of force as Christians. Our topic, which is a continuation of what we've been studying, is the use of force. Is it an option for Christians? Is the use of force an option for Christians in these last days, knowing well that persecution and other things will affect Christians in these last days? So let's move on to we will be reviewing some of the things that we've already touched in the past regarding this topic, and I hope that this will enlighten us again. In the Old Testament, we witness many occasions of the use of force on God's people. For example, Cain, the two children of Adam and Eve, right there in the beginning, when Cain slew Abel. Why? Because he did not like the idea that God accepted Abel's sacrifice and not his. So Cain used force, and resulting in the death of Abel. Secondly, Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember, people, the Christians, or there were no Christians at that time, God's people were affected because of the sinfulness of these cities, that they had to be moved away force was used on them because they wanted to keep the cleanliness or the holiness of God. Coming further into the future, we have Esau on Jacob. He vowed to kill his brother Jacob because Jacob tricked him into the receiving the birthright of the family. So Esau vowed to use violence to kill or take revenge on his brother's actions. We also have the stories in the Old Testaments of the descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Esau, what they did to the descendants of Jacob. So all these stories are stories of violence used on God's people. How do you think God's people should react? Should they just let them come in and abuse them? Should they allow them to take advantage of their meekness, of not repaying back bad things? That's the question we have today in these last days. We know that we will be persecuted. We know that people will be against us for speaking the truth. Should we shut our mouth and just keep to ourselves? What does God want us to do? Does He want us to go and hide? Or does He want us to keep speaking the truth? Keep speaking the truth, even though we will be endangered. God's people using force in the Old Testament. So now we will study some of the stories in the Old Testament where God's people themselves use force. The first one, used by the 10 brothers of Joseph, on Joseph himself. Joseph the dreamer. And they hated him. They hated his guts for speaking out aloud about what he dreamt. And what they did, they took him and threw him in the well. And they sold him to passing Ishmaelites who took Joseph to Egypt. So these are people of God using force. Do you think God was with them for doing that? We always look at them as the foundation of Christianity, the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob's name became Israel, and his 12 sons were the head of the 12 tribes. Also, we read in the Bible of the 2 brothers, Simeon and Judah, taking revenge on their sister. Remember, Judah became, along Judah's line came Jesus. Remember, Jesus was referred to as the Lion of Judah, because he was a descendant of Judah, direct descendant of Judah. So this Simon and Judah, they went over to the tribe where the sister was taken, and they told them, in order for you to leave, you need to be circumcised. So they waited, they forced all of them to be circumcised, and while the men were in their weakest, because of the circumcision that took place, they came in and executed all of them. They used force, they murdered, they killed. But according to Bible prophecies, you will see Simeon and you will see Judah up there in heaven if you reach there. The invasion of Jericho. Who were in Jericho? The people who were occupying the land of Canaan. So the invasion of Jericho, the Israelites came in and God took down the walls and they walked in and killed the people of Jericho. That was sanctioned by God. That's exactly what God told them to do. So these are some of the incidents in the Bible where God's people were expected to use force. They were expected to go in and murder and kill. The other incident was the Canaan takeover. Other tribes were occupying the land of Canaan, and the Israelites were expected to come in, take over their land, take over their houses, take over their plantations, and live, take over the land so they can live and occupy Canaan. And we also have the famous notion that tells us that we need to discipline our children. Spare not the rod. Spare not the rod. And that is the use of force in order to keep your children in line. Spare not the rod. Okay, let us look at our example. Jesus, our example. In John chapter 2, verses 13 and 15. John chapter 2, verses 13 and 15. It says, verse 13, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Verse 14 says, and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and changes of money sitting. So Jesus went over for the Passover. He went up to Jerusalem and he went into the temple. And what did he find inside the temple? He found people selling oxen, sheep, and doves. And there were money changers. Verse 15 says, and when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep, and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the table. So this was the action of Jesus himself, our example. He became violent. He used force on these people. Is he the example that we are to follow? Are we allowed to use force like Jesus did? So if we study this verse in a little more detail, it says that we went into the temple and he saw these things that are happening right there in the temple. And what happened? He went away and made up this scourge from small cords. So it took him some time. So it was not a spur of the moment. He saw what happened. He went away and made up this cord, and then say it took him 30 minutes or 1 hour, if it was a spur of the moment, then he would be thinking, oh no, I shouldn't be doing this. But it took him over that all that time, that he took that scourge of small cord and whipped the people out of the churches. He overturned the table, threw the money all over the place, set the birds free, and the animals. All these were taking place right inside the temple of God. So you see, that act of violence, that use of force by Jesus himself, should Christians of today, are we allowed to use force as well? That's the question that we are trying to answer today. So we've seen other in the Old Testament, when they went in and killed the people, use of violence, bloodshed everywhere. Here, Jesus himself, even though there's no bloodshed, but he used force to chase people away from the temple. Let's see in John chapter 18, verse 9 to 11. If we read those verses, it says, that the saying might be fulfilled. This is the story when Jesus, up in Gethsemane, when the people came up, led by Judas, to take Jesus, sent him by the church leaders and the state of Rome. It says, that the saying might be fulfilled, which he spake, of them which thou gavest me, have I lost none. Verse 10 says, then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it, and smote the high priest's servant, and cut off his ears, his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. This is Peter, one of Jesus' favorite disciples. He took his sword and sliced off the ear of one of the servants of the high priest. Those that were sent in to take Jesus prisoner. So Peter's actions was to protect his leader. So, was it the right action? What is the right thing to do? Verse 11 said, then said Jesus unto Peter, put up thy sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? So Peter did something which Jesus did not approve of. And he told him, Peter, take that sword, put it back where it belongs. I have to go through this. So even though Peter did it for his sake, Jesus did not approve of that action taken by Peter. So you see, there are contradicting ideas about the use of force. Jesus himself used force in the temple. But here when Peter used force to protect Jesus himself, Jesus did not agree with it. In Mark chapter 14, regarding the same incident in Mark's record of what happened up in Gethsemane, it says, and one of them stood by, drew a sword, this is Peter, and smote a servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Verse 48 says, and Jesus answered and said unto them, are you come out as against a thief? So Peter is speaking to those people who came in with all their armor, the soldiers, and they said, are you coming out to take a thief? Am I a thief to you? Why? Because these people came with swords. They came with a full armor and with staves to take me. He said, I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and you took me not. Every day we meet in the temple. Why didn't you take me prisoner from there? But the scripture must be fulfilled. So you see, both here and in John's record of this event, it is talking about the fulfillment of a prophecy. So the action taken by Peter was against the fulfillment of that prophecy. But you see, what's important here is the reasoning that Jesus used. He said, when you go against a thief, you have to take your armor. You have to take a sword. When you go against a criminal, when you go against a bad person, you have to arm yourself. But I myself am not armed. I am not a thief. I'm not a criminal. And you come and take me, sending all this army here to make sure that you take me away from here. I will just walk with you and you can take me prisoner. You don't need this whole army. But he is saying that people should protect themselves when they are dealing with thieves, when they are dealing with criminals, when they are dealing with bad people. That's what he is approving here. He said, are you coming out here armed because I am a thief? I'm not a thief. So in this case, he's saying that his people should be armed. In Luke chapter 22, verses 48 to 50, Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? This is the same incident as recorded by Luke. When they which were about him saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with a sword? So you see, we've already known that Peter, while following Jesus around, he had a sword. Did Jesus tell him to remove that sword? Throw that sword away. Throw it together with your boats and your net. Take everything away. He said, if you want the boat, if you want the net, you are not worthy of me. But these disciples, here in Luke's record says, not only Peter was armed with a sword. All his disciples, all those that surrounded him, were armed with a sword. Here they're asking him. Verse 49. When they which were about him saw what would follow, they said unto him. So the disciples were there, and these people were walking in with the whole Roman army, and Judas was in front, leading them to identify Jesus. And the disciples stood up and said, hey, these people are coming for you, Jesus. Shall we fight them with our sword? Shall we smite with a sword? So you see, these people, the disciples, were ready to fight. They were ready to use violence. They were ready to kill for their master. Christians of today, are we ready like these disciples to stand up for the truth that it may not be even this kind of violence that we force, that we will use, but that's the conclusion that we will come to in this study. But we should know that the disciples who surrounded Jesus every day were all armed. They had their sword, they had their knife or whatever they carry around. When Jesus told them to get rid of the boat, get rid of the net, he didn't tell them, take away those swords too, I don't need those swords. They carried the sword around with them. And here they're asking Jesus, shall we use this sword to protect you? Verse 50 says, and one of them, even before Jesus answered, Peter had already taken action. We know that Peter, that he was a very hyperactive person. So he did not wait for Jesus' answer. He already smote the guy's ear with his knife. You see, these people were very good with the use of arms. They were ready to use it. They were not even afraid of the Roman army that were following Judas. They were ready to use their sword against that army. And they were saying, Jesus, shall we fight them? Let's move on. Take the sword. Those who take the sword shall perish with the sword. Matthew chapter 26, verse 51 to 53 says, And behold, one of them which were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword. This is Peter. Matthew's record now. And struck a servant of the high priest and smote off his ear. Excuse me. Verse 52, Then said Jesus unto him, this is what Jesus said, Put up again thy sword into its place. For all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. Anyone who uses the sword in this instance, in this context, will perish with the sword. Let's go back in detail about this on this verse. Verse 52 says, Put up again thy sword in its place. Replace your sword. We don't need it. For all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. If that meant what we, the first we hear this verse, it should mean to me that I should not use any force. Why didn't Jesus tell them right from the first time to remove their armor? He allowed them for all these 3 years to walk around with him all over Palestine with their sword, with their armor. Who was the aggressor? It was Peter. Peter was the aggressor. He saw what's coming. Not only him, the other disciples too. And he said, no, I'm not going to allow this. And he pulled out his sword. Replace the sword, not discard the sword. So this is what Jesus said to them when they asked him, shall we take out our sword and fight this military that's coming? You know what Jesus said to them? No. Take that sword and put it back in the sheath where it belongs. But he didn't tell them, take that sword and throw it away. You don't need that sword. He told them, no, it should not be used for this purpose. And we've heard about the fulfillment of a prophecy that Jesus was allowing things to happen. If he did not want that to happen, he would have told his disciples to fight. But he said, no, put them back. You will need it other times, but not now. Do they really need it other times? It was the wrong use of the sword. That's the other. Even though Jesus allowed them to carry it out, this time, in this context, Jesus did not allow them to use the sword. So it was the wrong use of the sword that Peter did. The other disciples listened to what Jesus said and replaced their sword. But Peter, hyperactive as he was, slashed off that ear of Malchus. In Luke 22, verses 33 to 37. We've already covered these verses, but it's important that we go through it again. And he said unto them, when I sent you without purse and script and shoes, lacked ye anything? And they said, nothing. Jesus had a few weeks earlier told them, I will send you now. You know, he was training them for some time. Now he's going to see whether his training was effective or not. So he said, I will send you now. Take the message, the gospel to the people. When you go, don't take any money. Don't take any change of clothes. Don't take anything with you. And he said, the last time I sent you, you did not take anything. Did you lack anything? And all they said was, no. When we went there, people helped. We went to our village and they gave us food. They gave us shelter. They even gave us clothes to wear. So we did not need anything when the last time you sent us to go take the message. Verse 36 says, then said he unto them, Jesus to the disciples, but now, so he says, but the last time I told you don't take anything, but now, he said, he that hath a purse, if you have money in your wallet, let him take it. Take that money with you. And likewise his script, take it with you. If you have change of clothes, take it with you, because you'll need it. And he said, and he that hath no sword, if you don't have any armor, if you don't have any dagger, if you don't have any gun, if you don't have any knife, listen to what Jesus said, told them. Let him, if you don't have any sword, go and sell some of your garments and buy one. So Jesus is telling them, if you don't have any armor, I asked you if you have change of clothes, if you have extra things, sell those. Get yourself an armor, get yourself a sword, go buy one. So the same Jesus which told them not to use the sword when the soldiers came to pick him up, had told them here, you need one, you need a sword. No wonder he didn't tell them to remove the sword, because he's the one who's telling them, carry a sword with you. Christians, that's what our example had told these people. But how are we going to use? The question is, when are we going to use this sword? Verse 37 says, for I say unto you, that this that is written must yet be accomplished in me. See, prophecy has to be accomplished. That's why he did not want them to use the sword then. And he was reckoned and among the transgressors, for the things concerning me have an end. I'm about to go. I'm allowing these people to take me. I'm allowing things to turn out. Because the sinfulness of people, I have to die. So don't stop that. If you want me to be your sacrifice unto God the Father, let this thing go. Don't use that sword I told you to carry. Don't use it now. But the thing is, he told them to arm themselves. He told his disciples that you'll need to protect yourself with a sword. So in today's world, you need to protect yourself with a gun. You need to arm yourself. You need to be strong enough, physically fit to protect you and your family. For those of you who have small kids, they need to be protected. You need to keep yourself fit. How are they going to protect themselves if you are not fit? Not ready to stand up for them. Jesus wants you to be ready. Jesus wants you to carry that sword in order to protect you and your family. And we know that in these last days, when you stand up for the truth as a Christian, you will be persecuted. People will attack you. So you need to be strong. You need to arm yourself. If you cannot be fit enough to protect yourself physically, carry a sword. Buy a gun. That's exactly what Savior is telling us here. So our task is to determine the use of that sword. So with the idea of arming ourselves is out of the question now. Jesus wants us to arm ourselves. But when to use this armor? is the question. Because when the disciples wanted to use that armor on the soldiers and the traitor Judas, what did Jesus tell them? No. Put that sword back. This is not the time to use it. Let's look back at some of the instances in the Bible. Canaan. The land was promised to the descendants of Abraham. Now the descendants of Abraham approach the land of Canaan. And who was already occupying the land of Canaan? The descendants of Esau, the descendants of Ishmael, the descendants of other. They had already occupied the land of Canaan. So what God did, He opened the Red Sea. 40 years earlier, before they went into the land, He parted over the Red Sea. So He gave them 40 years to repent of their ways. Then they crossed the Red Sea 40 years earlier. 40 years later, Joshua sent in the 2 spies into Jericho. They met this prostitute, Rahab. And what did Rahab say? What did Rahab tell them? When you crossed over the Red Sea 40 years ago, we all heard about it. Our hearts melted. We feared about your God. Not only us here in Jericho, the whole occupants of Canaan. We knew about the God that was leading you here. So they all knew about God. God gave them 40 years to come over, cross over the Jordan, come to where the Israelites were, and tell them, your God will be our God. But did they do that? No, they hardened their hearts. No wonder God allowed the Israelites to come in and kill and murder. So all this violence was sanctioned by God Himself. Why? Because the door of probation had closed. God had given them all that time, but they did not respond to God's calling. Likewise for most of us. God has given us time, all this time. We are going to church, but our door of probation is about to close, like the inhabitants of Canaan. Christ's temple cleansing. Those people were abusing the temple of God. So what happened? Christ Himself came in and cleansed the temple. Likewise, the apostle use of force. Since Christ's death. Apostles' use of force since Christ's death. So what happened? We've gone through that situation. Christ did not allow them to use force. The use of force was not an option then. But we know that Christ had told them to arm themselves. To arm themselves. Buy a sword. If you don't have a sword, go sell some of your belongings and buy one. Make sure you are armed in these last days. When you are expecting to be persecuted, you need to be armed. Christ said, if you don't have any sword, sell some of your belongings, buy one, and get armed. So now this is where we will end. In our next session, we will then try to come to a conclusion on when can we use force. How should we use force Are we allowed to kill? We know that the commandment says do not kill. So Jesus allowed them to be armed. For what reason? That's what we will try to answer in our next session. So that is where we will end today, and I hope that this has enlightened us on the issue of, are we as Christians allowed to use force in these last days, given persecution and other things that will go against us? Are we allowed to use force? Thank you, and we hope that we will be blessed in this lesson that we have just covered. Let's pray.